Hello and welcome to week 5. Actually, I'm just going to call it week 6. And I call it week 6. I've done 2 in 1 week, but welcome to week 6. We know what you watched. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Moving right along. Week 6, Genesis 1:6 in Hebrew. This is now the second day. We're beginning the second day of creation. Vayomer Elohim Yehirakia Petok Hamayim Vihi Mavdil, Bain Mayim Lamayim. Man, I massacred that. I'll try it again on the last slide. Can you translate this? Here's the translation. And God said, let be a dome in the midst of the waters. Oops. And let there be a dividing between waters to waters. Okay, I want to fix one thing real quick. There, the holum wasn't on the right place. This dot is called a holum. On top of a vav, it's called a holum vav. It's a sign of a long O. The dot, the vav is like a piggyback on which the long O dot rests. And I copy and paste this from a certain site, and it's holum vav's never quite copyright, and I always forget to do it. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's talk about it first. Let's talk about it, right? So, and God said, "Let there be a dome." So there is a general sense that the ancients, and this is not just in Genesis 1, but that in other creation stories, there's this sense that the rain comes down, right? But the rain doesn't come down all the time. In the flood, the water really came down. And so the way they conceptualized this was the idea of there being a dome, as it were, a boundary, a firmament that held the waters back, a retaining wall, as it were, in the sky. And I've been reading a little bit of John Walton, and I really think that he is quite correct in saying that Genesis 1 needs to be read in light of the way they conceptualized the world at the time. That Genesis 1 is not a science textbook. I mean, everybody knows it's not a science textbook. But what I mean is, and I've thought this before. I read it in Walton. Walton, and he says it so well, that science textbooks don't stay the same, right? So the science textbooks of the 1960s are not the science textbooks of 2019. So if God had inspired Genesis 1 in terms of the science of 2019, it might not have been a good book for 2040 or 1984. You see what I'm saying? So it makes perfect sense to the way God reveals. God reveals himself in the categories and in the language and in the paradigms of the people to whom he's speaking, right? God wants to be understood. And so God speaks the language of the people to whom God is revealing himself. And so it makes perfect sense. This is the incarnational principle. God takes on the flesh of the people to whom he is speaking. And so it makes perfect sense that when Genesis 1 was revealed, it was revealed within the paradigms and the worldview of the ancient Near East, right? And so if we really want to understand Genesis 1, we should not read it in terms of the issues we're asking today, but we should read it in terms of the issues of ancient cosmologies, like the Enuma Elish and so forth, and the Atrahasis and Egyptian and so forth. That those are, if we really want to understand Genesis 1 in context, we need to read it in the light of them, not in the light of our questions today. This is, in my opinion, excellent theology. There's nothing heretical about this. This is reading the Bible for what it actually meant, rather than shoving our issues down its throat. Well, anyway, so what we seem to be hearing here, it's a picture. It's a poetic picture that is in ancient categories. It's in ancient clothing. It's incarnated in ancient Near Eastern clothing, as it were. The envelope is ancient Near Eastern. And so let there be a dome uh, in the midst of the waters. Because remember, Genesis 2 is chaotic waters. You just have this unproductive, unuseful stuff. And God is the God who brings order out of chaos. To me, that is such a rich takeaway from Genesis 1. God is a God who creates order where there is chaos. He is a God who puts to use things that are useless. And so he's this chaotic water. God is going to bring it into order. Let there be a dome to hold back the chaotic waters above, so that they don't destroy the earth. Of course, in the flood, he'll let them loose, and they will destroy the earth. Let there be a firmament. Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters. And let there be a division, causing something that separates between waters and waters. So the waters above are separated from the waters below. Now, so I might mention here, this is in dialogue with creation stories like the Enuma Elish in Babylon. In the Enuma Elish, of course, there are multiple gods who are duking it out. That's one of the main differences. There's God and God alone. There's only one God here. There aren't a bunch of gods fighting it out in a kind of theomachy. That's the word for the divine conflict, theomachy. Anyway, so in the Enuma Elish, Marduk, who's the guy that wins, takes Tiamat, the goddess of sea waters, salt waters. He takes Tiamat, he breaks her in half, and he takes some of her waters and puts them in the sky, and he takes some of her waters and puts them down on the land. There's a superficial similarity here. But notice the differences, that there is no fighting. There is one God, and it is Elohim, the God. His name is not mentioned. Yahweh is not mentioned in this chapter, but there's one God, and there is no one who opposes that one God. And this God is single-handedly creating order out of chaos. By the way, the word Tiamat is related to the word for the deep in Genesis 1:2, Tehom. I don't think that there is any I don't think this is any kind of this is not a connection, because in general, nobody who spoke Hebrew would have thought, oh, Tehom, that's like Tiamat. I doubt it. They're just saying the word for the deep, the waters on which the world, from which the world emerges, the land emerges, as we'll see in the verses to come. Well, okay, so that's a little bit of interpretation. Let's go into the translation more detail. So, and said God, let be a dome in the middle of the waters, and let be. Okay, so we're gonna analyze this in a second. Elohim is it's masculine plural absolute, im, but it's as we've said, it's construed as a singular. This is the unique thing about the God of Israel. Let be, we're going to analyze that in a second. Rakia, that's a noun. Batok, we're going to look at the two parts of that in a minute. And okay, so why am I talking about this? Because we're going to do it all again in a second. Okay, causing to separate. This is a complicated participle, maybe not too complicated, but causing to separate all comes out of that. So let be a dome in the middle of the waters, causing to separate between waters, mayim, two waters. By the way, the ayim, mayim, yeah, the ayim, is that right? No, never mind. Okay, so there you have a translation. Grammar. So this is, see, vav patak doubling, it's a converted imperfect. Or if I don't use that language, it's a preterite. It's a true past tense. And said. It's from Amar, and there's nothing kind of added to the thing. So it's a call, QAL, or a G, Grunstamm. It's nothing done to it. So it's a G converted imperfect, or a G preterite. Third masculine singular, because the subject's a he, from Amar. I meant to delete the Segol there underneath. That's a short E. Anyway, so Vayomer. Okay, this here we've seen before. It is jussive. That means it's a let be. Let it be, let it be. So it's also Grunstamm of Haya, to be. It's third masculine singular again because rakia is, I guess, masculine. It's an it, it's a he or whatever. Okay, so let be. Rakia, batok. So ba is in midst. This is a prefix. And then the word for the, hey, patak, doubling, the waters. I was going to say a second ago that waters is double. I think it's dual, two waters, which there are two waters in this story, right? And then, which makes sense, waters and waters. Then this is another jussive, except it has a vav on the front. This is not a converted situation. It's just a and let be. It's another jussive. This right here. Okay, so the letters are badal, bait, dalet, lamed. The Hirik Yod here has me thinking that it's hifil, or an H stem. And the patak under a mem, the mem tells me it's a participle. So the ing is the participle part. The H means causing. So if badal means to divide, then the H stem means to cause to divide. It's a causative stem. So with the participle, it's causing to divide. And it's masculine singular because it's referring to rakia, I think. So it's masculine singular matching the thing that's causing to divide. So hifil participle, masculine singular. Absolute means there's no of after it. Just hold that thought. Bain, mayim, la mayim. So lamed is another prefix like bait. If bait means something like in some of the time, lamed means something like to some of the time. So let's do it again. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia batok hamayim vihi bavdil mavdil bain mayim lamayim. Let me try it again. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia batok hamayim vihi mavdil bain mayim lamayim. And God said, let be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it be a dividing between waters and waters. Now the letters, for those of you who are just trying to learn Hebrew, Vav Yod, Aleph, Mem, Resh, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yod, Mem, final Mem. This is a middle Mem. This is a final Mem. Same letter, but one's in the middle, the other's at the end. Yod, Hey, Yod. Resh, Kof, Yod, Ayin. Beit, Tav, Holam Vav, Vav. Final Kaf, as opposed to a middle Kaf. Do we have a middle Kaf anywhere? We don't. Okay, never mind. Final Kaf when it's the last letter. Kaf, Kaf. Hey, Mem, Yod, Mem. Final Mem. See, here we have the middle Mem and the final Mem in the same word. Vav, Yod, Hey, Yod, Mem. It's the initial and middle Mem look the same. Beit, Dalet, Yod, Lamed, Beit, Yod, final Nun. Oh dear. So that's a final Nun. It's the final Nun. We don't have any middle Nuns. But you kind of pull it down when it's the last letter. The final Kaf, pull it down. Mem, Yod, Mem, Lamed, Mem, Yod, Mem. Okay. When we're comfortable, I'm going to point out the piggyback letters. I've already mentioned that Vav is a piggyback for a long O. It's not, when it does that, it's not really serving as a consonant. It's serving as a vowel helper. But I'm going to not tell you that. I'm going to hold off. So this has been Genesis 1:6.